Hi, Hunter Hastings here. Over the past several weeks, we've talked a few times on the podcast about leadership in a business context, a business management context. And we're a little bit skeptical about how it's typically taught in business school and by business coaches, because it seems to be in the context of hierarchy and control and that top-down approach to management that we're trying to find an alternative for. Leadership is a bit narcissistic and a bit pushy the way it's normally communicated. But there are other ways to think about it. And today we're talking to Dr. Yasmin Davidds, and she's published a book she calls Graciously Assertive, and it points us towards being better human beings. And she has a lot of ways for us to think about that, and a lot of tools for us to approach that. And if we're better human beings, then maybe leadership will find us. Maybe people will be willing to gather around us and share our visions and share our mission and help us get where we want to go. So let's think about leadership in a different way as we talk to Dr. Yasmin Davidds.
This is the Value Creators Podcast. Value creation is the sole purpose of any business and every business, and for all of us as entrepreneurs. Listen to great value creators as they share their successes, trials, and lessons learned. Join us as we explore how to think as value creators, how to act as value creators, and how to view business through the lens of value creation.
Yasmin, welcome to the Value Creators Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a great honor, and it's very important to have this discussion with you. We've been talking about leadership over the past several weeks, and we're a little bit skeptical of the way that it's taught often in business school and by some business coaches. It tends to be hierarchical, and sometimes it's even narcissistic. Be a great leader and kind of assert yourself that way. It's attention seeking. But you have a much different approach to leadership, and we're going to talk about that today. You're a doctor of psychology, which is important, and your direction is for people to work harder at being a better human being, a better version of ourselves, the best we can be, and then leadership might find us. That's how I interpret what you do. So give us a kind of overview to start with, Yasmin, about being a better human, and maybe you can give us some history about how you arrived at that point of view.
Being a better human really to me is about being the best version of yourself and being compassionate and understanding that everybody has a story. And yes, you have your story, but so does everybody else. And being able to hold space for other individuals and not rush to judgment of other individuals, because then we make decisions and then we treat them based on our decision, the story we created in our mind about them. And that's how the country and the world has become so polarizing, is we have these beliefs and we believe what we believe, and we forget that the other side has a reason why what they believe, and we assume they're wrong and that both of us can't be right. And therefore you treat people like that, and the world has become so complicated and just, polarizing, and we're not in a good place. And to me, if you focus on leading yourself first, being self-aware, socially aware, how you impact people, self-regulating, self-managing, and then being grateful. And there's these pillars that I believe in based on my research that I've also found that if you live by them, not only will you naturally become a better leader when you become a better human being, because you're leading people. And therefore, it's not a competency so much as really emotional intelligence, but you need to start with leading yourself. You cannot be good to people if you're not good to yourself. You cannot be grateful of people if you're not grateful for yourself, at least not in a consistent, sustainable way.
Well, I'm going to ask you to go through the pillars as you present them in your book. The book is called Graciously Assertive, it's a wonderful title. We're going to dig into some of the nuances of that, but it conjures up mental images of strength and balance with empathy, which we talk about a lot. Maybe you can just give us the quick summary of being graciously assertive, and then we'll get into each of the pillars individually, Yasmin.
Absolutely. So great. When you say assertive on its own, it's really one-sided. You state what you want, you state what you need, and that's where it ends, being assertive. Being graciously assertive, it really means kindness with assertiveness, but the kindness in the sense of understanding how to self-advocate while holding space for the other side, understanding that the other side has as many needs as you do, and you need to listen first before you are heard yourself. So you need to offer what it is that you need. You need to lead with an example of what it is that you need, which is very different than just asserting yourself. But this really came about because assertiveness by itself, when I was teaching it to women in my leadership program, wasn't being effective. They were being empowered to assert themselves, but with power comes responsibility and how you communicate what you're trying to accomplish, to have the impact to accomplish your goal. And it wasn't until we applied graciousness to it that women started getting all these results, or people started getting results because people were actually open to listening to them.
Well, you've got these 8 pillars that you lay out in the book, along with a lot of case studies that I would urge people to consult and read because it brings the 8 pillars to life. Well, let's go through them one by one because I did find them very, very helpful. The first one is self-awareness. And we like that thought. We think in terms of subjective value. We think of looking to yourself to understand the subjectivism of value. But you also include how we interact with our environment as part of your self-awareness. So let's start there. That sounds really hard to be truly self-aware.
Absolutely. And research shows that 97% of those that lead us in organizations are not self-aware. 97%. And I do believe it's because we are never taught to be self-aware. And that is to take inventory of ourselves, how we show up, our strengths, our weaknesses. Usually we try to ignore them, and being true to yourself about them, being honest with yourself about who you are, how you're showing up, how things affect you, how your emotions affect you at work, at home, and how you are responding to your environment in the way that once you have that self-awareness, then you can do something about it. But if you're not self-aware, you're just going to act the way you act without any consideration of the impact you're making on people.
And is it hard for people, Yasmin? And can you train people to do a better job of self-awareness?
Absolutely. You can train people, but they have to want it, right? They have to want to be self-aware, but it's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, because then you can manage how you show up. Sometimes you get results that you don't want and you don't understand why. It starts with self-awareness, because you're bringing an energy to the table and acting in ways that are getting the results that you may not want. So self-awareness is the first step, but it could be taught. There's exercises and a different level of mostly exercises and simulations that you can work with.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about it a lot since I read your book, and I think about self-awareness in myself, and sometimes it only happens after the event, and you wish you'd been more self-aware beforehand, so it becomes a habit.
But see, that's great though. The fact that you're aware of it after means that the next time it comes around, you're going to respond differently because now you're self-aware. It doesn't have to happen before. It usually does happen after, as we start becoming more self-aware. So I love that. That's wonderful.
I'm trying. Next on the list of the pillars is social awareness. So you call that understanding and appreciating how our energy and behavior impact others. So that's an interesting thought, not just our attitudes, but our energy and our behavior, thinking about social awareness in that context.
Oh my gosh, that's probably one of the most powerful ones that people, it's kind of an extension when you tell people, read the room, read the room, something is going on. This is not the right time, or how you're showing up is impacting those around you, especially in a leadership position. Your team is really feeding off your energy. Your team is feeding off of how you're showing up, how you're either inspiring them or making them fear you or whatever it may be. So how you show up, your energy, meaning that if you're not having a good day, say it. You know what? I'm not at my best right now. You don't have to say why, so just so that you know that, so your team can have compassion for you and know that this is not at your best. But then when you're at your best, being able to say, I'm feeling great today, we're going to do this. So your team knows that you are human, that you're normal, and that they can work with you. And also they become more committed to your truth. And that means that you're being honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. Truth to yourself is probably one of the most attractive traits of a leader for those that they lead, is because then it shows authenticity, and people want to be led by people who are authentic.
And is that where we plug in empathy?
Absolutely. Empathy is really weaved into all aspects because
Yeah.
self-awareness and empathy is having empathy with yourself, understanding that you may be acting in a way you don't want. And sometimes it's triggered by trauma. And so it's time to heal that area of yourself so that you don't react that way. So empathy for yourself. And then social awareness, how you may be inflicting on others some of your own issues by treating people in ways that may be toxic and that cause people to not feel good, not being inclusive. So empathy, understanding that everybody wants to feel they're part of a greater purpose, and as a leader it's your job to make them feel that. I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, we like that term purpose and shared purpose especially, because that's inspiring and it's motivating. And so you believe that we can find a shared purpose.
Absolutely. It could be anything from, I know a chairman of the board that sells medical equipment, and and the pacemakers for the heart, he sees it as saving lives. Their company is saving lives with these pacemakers. He doesn't see it as we sell medical equipment, and he gets the whole company behind. We saved 357,000 lives today because that's how many we sold or whatever it may be. So you can frame it in a way that really gives purpose because it's the truth. It's just how you frame it.
Right. So self-regulation is the next pillar. That sounds a bit restricting. That's how we think of the word regulation, but how do you use it?
The reason I actually had self-management first, and as I researched the term self-management, it had a lot to do with managing your time, managing, your priorities, which is very external, which is great. We all need to do. But what I was speaking about more is managing your emotions. And so regulation, I didn't want anybody to get confused with what I was trying to come across. So self-regulation means that I don't believe we understand yet, until you have self-awareness and social awareness, how our behavior impacts people. And hurt people. And unless you're able to identify that how you're acting may be hurting people, you may not be inspired to self-regulate. But self-regulate is understanding, I don't want to inflict what I'm going through on other people. If your wife asked you for a divorce this morning, when you go to work, you're not going to be a very positive person, and you're going to probably release your anger to the people that you're leading without even really understanding that you're doing that. So being able to say, you know what's happening to me right now is happening to me. My people don't deserve to be treated in certain ways that I may want to lash out. Therefore, I'm going to ensure that I don't carry this over to my team. I mean, that takes a lot of emotional intelligence, right, to be able to do that. But I believe that if, as leaders and as human beings, if we were to do that more, we wouldn't inflict the pain that we inflict. I always say, I know somebody's in therapy because of me in my younger years, right? Meaning that we all do it, but it's until we are able to self-regulate that we do it less.
Yeah, it's a very empowering thought. And you also include self-compassion. We've got to like ourselves and be sympathetic to ourselves.
That is probably one of the most difficult pillars, especially for women, men and women, but to be compassionate. We are so hard on ourselves, and the most judgmental people are the ones that are hardest on themselves because they judge themselves harsh first. So I always say, if you start with self-compassion, you'll have more compassion for others.
Yeah, and that's nice because you've got another pillar, which is zero tolerance for judgment. So in a room, in a meeting, but also with yourself, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because all the women that I interviewed for this book, they're like, okay, well, zero tolerance to judgments. We need to start with ourselves. We can't be judgmental. So, let me work on that, and then I'll work on my environment, which to me, it's progress, not perfection. It's about being aware of these pillars and then always trying to regulate or put yourself on check. Okay, am I being judgmental? Let me take a step back. Let me be more inclusive, because you need to lead by example. You can't have an inclusive organization if you're not inclusive yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very refreshing thought. And we tend to use judgment in a different way in entrepreneurship, but you're talking about not imposing your opinions on others in an inappropriate way.
Yes, because that has caused so much issues. I mean, that's where we see war come to place. This is where you can't understand that other people may not think like you. And there is an area of compromise somewhere, but you have to be emotionally mature enough, honestly, to be able to come to that place without imposing what you think is right for everyone.
Right. You also have a pillar of gratitude, and we're going to expand on the idea of mindset that's included in there. But you picked that one out, and a lot of people don't present themselves as grateful, and I thought this was a particularly important one. So let's have you talk about
Absolutely.
gratitude to us.
Gratitude is probably the most empowering of the 8 pillars, only because leading from a place of gratitude or coming from a gratitude mindset means that you're able to acknowledge that everything happens in life. Once you live completely in that mindset, is you can find the gift in it, which I believe you can find the gift in, and which I have done with my life and the thousands of women that have gone through my programs. And just the gratitude mindset allows you to have an energy of graciousness, of being able to find the good in people, not being naive to the world around us, but understanding you have a choice of how you're going to show up. And if you can find 5 things you're grateful for every day, that will change your energy that you step out into the world with. And energy is so powerful because you can change the dynamics of a room just with your energy, because it is contagious, right? But if you have a mindset about being angry with the world or not being grateful, that in itself also has power in a negative way. So we are so much more powerful than we think we are, just by our mindset and the energy that gives out to the world.
I think I remember from the book, I can't remember if it was you or one of your interviewees who actually writes down 5 things they're grateful for at the beginning of the day. Does that?
Absolutely. I do that. I wake up actually in my mind, what am I grateful for today? And several of my interviewees and most of the women that go through my programs, because once you're able to get in that gratitude mindset, everything else becomes more natural, and you get more inspired, or self-awareness, social awareness, because you now have a mindset of, let me find the gift in this. And no matter what you go through in life, it can be the most traumatic experience, and you will reframe it over time and find the gift in it. If you can live a life like that, you will definitely live a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, it's such a nice phrase. Find the gift in that, because sometimes it may be hard, but it's there somewhere, right?
Absolutely. I've been able to find the gift in abuse, in, addiction, in, suicidal tendencies, to find the gift in, just everything that's ever happened to me. I'm able to reframe it and say, I learned this because of it. I learned community and rehab. I learned so many different things. I'm so grateful for having gone through that experience. It's made me who I am today, and I love who I am today.
Yeah, that's a very positive thought. We're delighted to announce the Value Creators online course. For entrepreneurs in every kind of business, big, small, or medium, at every stage, in every industry, our course provides the foundations and principles on which to build success. Simple, clear purpose and principles give rise to creativity, innovation, and competitively superior business action. There are 11 foundational principles or mental models that together cohere into the value business model. Principles for value generation, principles for value operations, principles for value finance and accounting, and principles for value sustainability, as well as the new knowledge accumulation you'll need for continuous innovation. These principles are delivered by top business professors from top business schools: Mark Packard, Per Byland, Gordon Miller, David Rapp, and Bart Vanderhagen. You'll find video lessons from them, along with downloadable tools, processes, and other valuable content. Master these lessons, and you'll master the most important skill in business: value creation. Go to thevaluecreators.com and click the course link. Healthy boundaries, Yasmin. I struggled with this one a little bit. I tried to put it in work context, your work-life balance, which we used to talk about. Now it's all changed because of hybrid work and that kind of thing. What were you thinking about when you identified healthy boundaries?
Healthy boundaries are so important, because as human beings, if we do not have healthy boundaries, we will burn out. we will burn out. And I've seen it in my organization. So I have very strict rules on healthy boundaries, not work-life balance, because at the end, the organization ends up losing out because more people get sick, more people end up feeling, taken advantage of, resentful to their bosses. But the leader needs to show these healthy boundaries by being able to say, you know what, I'm going to turn off my computer at this time. And I know it's difficult because in being an entrepreneur myself, we're always working, right? But understanding that unless I disconnect, I'm not going to be the best version of myself tomorrow, right? And the next day, and to be at my best. And then when I do burn out, I start making little mistakes that are so irrelevant, that should not be made. So I have to condition myself and put it in my calendar, stop at this time, no matter what. And I just get under my blankets, turn on the TV and disconnect. And I feel so much better the next day. But it does take discipline to take care of ourselves. But it is not only best for us on work results, but it is healthy for us. And as we know, we're at an all-time high of anxiety, depression, burnout, and all of that. And that comes from our inability to have healthy boundaries.
And then you wrap it all up with assertive or graciously assertive communication. So it's packaging all the pillars into your interaction with others. There are styles and steps. Maybe you can
absolutely. And this actually is the beginning of where graciously assertive came about. And that is because as I was teaching women to empower themselves, and they were becoming empowered, they were going to their bosses and telling them exactly how they felt without being gracious, and realized that their communication style, being just assertive, was not getting the results they wanted. So with power comes responsibility. Therefore, there had to be a way to help them approach their assertiveness in a way to help other people be open to hearing them. And that's when I brought the graciousness into it and started developing these steps about leading the conversation with what it is that you want. You want to be heard? You got to listen first. So their step number one is listen and show appreciation. If you go to someone and once again, with a gratitude mindset and be able to show appreciation, thank you for giving me some time. Thank you for, scheduling this appointment. Thank you for the work you've been, whatever it is that you want to appreciate them for, it automatically opens them to hear what you have to say because they're feeling appreciated and that you listen. And be empathetic to whatever they're sharing. And then step number two is share your message or your ask with I statements. Never you, because that's accusatory, right? You're being accusatory, they're going to get defensive. I feel this way. I would like this. I'm asking for whatever it may be, and then lead to asking them, what are your thoughts on this? Right? What you're doing is you're showing them it's not just about me. It's about us working together to get to common goals and propose solutions for this issue I may be having or this ask that I'm asking for. But I want to hear your thoughts on this and find common goals on what you can align with as they're sharing their thoughts, the other person, on what you just said. And then come ready to propose solutions, which is step 4. And ask for their input on these solutions so they can be joint solutions, because that makes the other person more invested in the solution. And if you take these 4 steps, you may have to repeat some, go back to number 2, whatever it may be. And there's a process and there's, verbiage and everything that I have in my book that you use. But when we started doing that 11 years ago in my programs, it completely transformed the relationship when they were communicating in this way, because now they felt heard the other side, and it wasn't just about you, I want this. It really became about how can we work through this? And you can use it in self-advocacy, but you still hold space for the other side. And not only did it start transforming the relationship and your communication, people started using this with their children, with their spouses, with community members, and it started transforming all those relationships. Marriages became better. Children relationships became better. And they realized what they were really doing is just becoming better human beings on how they communicated and empathy, and it transformed their lives. And that's where the pillars came from. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. We're having so much transformation here. People's lives are better. Their careers are building their businesses better, more clients. What's going on here? And then I reversed engineered and did my
Yeah.
research and realized that this is where it came from.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant outcome, and you can reverse engineer it to the components. I love how you did that. I did pick up one phrase that I might ask you to highlight, Yasmin. You talked about communication as firm and direct, yet kind and respectful. That seems like a pretty tricky balance to pull off, is it?
And, it depends on your mindset, I believe. If you have a gratitude mindset and zero tolerance to judgment and understanding that that person has a story, that person is a human being with pains and hurts as you are, that whatever it is that they're going through or how they're showing up, they have a reason for that. It may not be right, you may not agree with it, but most people show up in ways because that's how they were taught or whatever it may be. And being empathetic to their story, whatever it may be, going in with that mindset automatically allows you to hold space for them. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It just means you honor and respect them enough as a human being, just as you're asking for them to do for you, right?
Yeah.
So if you have that mindset of gratitude, then you show up in a way where you could still believe what you believe and self-advocate, but it's an alignment with allowing them to do the same. So I don't believe that you can do that without a gratitude mindset because it becomes too difficult. You're stuck in ego, you're stuck in your right. And even if you try to, you're being fake and it'll be very much seen.
Right. You've written this book very much from the point of view of women, and especially women who might find themselves in minority situations for, in various designations. I found it powerful as a man, so
And
it doesn't withdraw from any of the benefit for me. But what's the special situation for women that you are trying to help?
yes, and let me share with you that the communication model, and just the whole book is for men as well. My publisher, though, said, your niche has been for 20 years women, let's stick to women. I said, okay, but in all my interviews, I'm going to share with everybody that it's for both men and women. So as you said, it differently is for both. But for women, especially women of color, women in general, and it can't be denied as research shows, we have more struggles in the workplace. There is sexism, there's unconscious biases that we struggle with. And then women of color have a whole other layer of biases towards them. So as the book explains, we're exhausted. And what I mean is I call them like slices of the soul. And that is that every time there's a bias where you feel that you can't be your authentic self at work because you won't be respected. You won't, you can't say something in Spanish because it'll be looked upon. And not that you're going to communicate that way, but that's your language. That is just, there's so many the authenticity of who we are basically becomes invisible. And it's hard to get those allies up above to help us rise because they don't feel connected to us because for the most part, maybe the only Latin or Black woman they know has worked in their home cleaning. It may be, this is just the truth of what we go through at times. Women of color that no matter what they do, they work 3 times harder and they just can't move up or they don't get the same opportunities. So sometimes women say, well, I can't be gracious, because they get angry and, they may have every right to be angry, but where's that going to get you? Right. And my thing is instead educate, be the bigger person, help them see that a Latin woman, a Black woman, an Asian woman, we work hard and we thrive and we could rise, but be the bigger person and don't be led by anger. Instead, find the gift of the opportunity. When people say, I don't want to be the only, well, be the first then and lead the way. Mm-hmm. Right. So it is exhausting. And unfortunately, it's the way it is right now. But my goal is that as women of color start rising and getting into those positions, they'll change the rules. And that's difficult because sometimes they feel they have to live by the rules and they're barely holding on. And even in those positions in the C-level.
Well, it's a beautiful message, Yasmin. I think we'll get better. I'm an optimist about that. But
I agree. I think so too.
You touch on moral leadership. The phrase you use is leading with the values we hold dear. And we really endorse that idea of understanding your own values and keeping those in business. We tend to use the word ethic. There's an entrepreneurial ethic of service. I'm trying to make somebody else's life better and get the reward for doing that. So we find that to be an ethic. We like the term virtue, which is kind of non-spiritual, right? It's a
Yes.
cognitive way of saying some of the moral and ethical things. But tell us about how you think about the moral component of what you teach.
I believe that many people get lost in leadership because they're trying to adapt to whatever the organization, the leadership, whatever it is that they want. But it's so important to be very clear on your values. What is important to you? What kind of organization do you want to work with? If you're an entrepreneur, what kind of business do you want to have? And once you get very clear on your values, on what you will and will not do, what you're willing to fight for or believe in, and what you're willing to let clients, you're willing to let go of, no matter how much money they bring, because they don't align with your values as a business or whatever it may be, then it becomes so much easier on the path you take, and you don't get lost as much. So being a moral leader to me is getting very clear on your absolute willing to do and not willing to do, how you want to treat people, and what the impact on your either message or your leadership, if you are in an organization, or your business wants to make on the world. You need to see beyond selling a product or service. You need to be able to say, I want to leave this world in this place and know that I had this impact, and how am I going to live that out through my business? That will get you through anything that you go through in life, no matter how bad it gets, because you have a greater purpose now. If you don't have that greater purpose, then you're always going to be seeking, and you will be misguided a lot easier.
And your purpose is a moral purpose. That's the point you're making.
Absolutely. Your purpose, it's moral for that individual, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, ethics is key, right? Moral equals ethics. Ethical leader, don't hurt people, help people. Don't just sell something for the sake of selling unless they really need it. I mean, do it right in a way about making humanity better, instead of, once you sell something to someone that does not need it, that just starts a whole trajectory of lack of trust. People won't trust you. Your business won't be trusted. Then sales turns into not trusting. It starts this whole ripple effect. But if you can sell to those, be able to say, you know what, this product I don't think it's a right fit for you. I mean, to be able to say that takes a heck of a moral leader. Mm-hmm. Right. But that's the type of leadership that we need, because we need to build trust into businesses again.
Yeah, that idea of trust, which is something that's earned, as you say. One of the interesting things about the internet, I think, is that we find ways to generate trust with people we've never met, with people we've never seen. We buy what's on sale. We expect the best of it, and usually we're satisfied. So we're earning trust that way. Maybe better today than we were in the past. It's an interesting phenomenon.
And I think being able to return something at no cost, that's building trust, because you're saying, hey, you're understanding that I'm not going to pay for shipping if I didn't like the product, because I don't even get to see it. But if you're paying for that free ship, then you're building trust with me. I can trust that you're going to allow me to take a look at this and return it if I don't want. So absolutely, the actions behind this e-commerce world will definitely build that trust with an organization.
That's a great observation. I wanted to touch on one other thing I picked up from your book. When we talk about eliminating hierarchy and bad management and structural barriers in organizations, we talk about removal. People say, how do you do that? Well, look and find the barriers and remove them. And you have a phrase where you talk about avoiding ungracious behaviors, which sounded like a little bit of removal, right? You're recognizing the ungraciousness and you take it away. Is that a good way to approach this?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're in a position of leadership, to remove those barriers, like for one example is a leader who goes into an organization where those they lead are not allowed to question them, right? You don't question authority. I know a leader who actually asks her team, her direct reports, to question her behavior if they don't see that it's aligning with what it is she's teaching. So she was overworking, she was on vacation, she was on her laptop sending emails, and one of her direct reports said, I need to speak with you. And you're not showing great behavior. You're telling us when we're on vacation, we should be emailing as well, because that's what you're doing. So, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm going to put myself on check. Being able, so she changed the dynamics, at least in her department, of how she led by allowing team members to question her in a gracious way, in a respectful way. So my philosophy is, if you're a leader, change what you see as ungracious. And if you're in an environment that is not gracious and you feel that it's hurting you, which for the most part it does, even unconsciously, you need to leave, exit, create an exit strategy and go elsewhere, because no one deserves to be in that environment.
And then another word that we're trying very hard to get right is mindset. We're trying to think of management as a mindset, as opposed to a set of methods and principles and tools and so on. And you have this, I call it a combination mindset, the abundance mentality, the growth mentality, and the gratitude mentality. And you put all those together and you've got the right mindset for business. Could you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Well, the gratitude mindset we thought about.
Yeah, yeah.
And, the abundance mindset, there's so much where people think scarcity mindset. And to be a tremendous entrepreneur, you cannot, I believe, think of scarcity mindset, because you have to take a lot of risk, and you have to understand that this one might not work out, but the next one will. And you have to think there's enough in the world for all of us in order for you to take those risks. Because if not, if you're going to try to compete with the big dogs, right, with the big companies, and think, forget it, scarcity mindset, there's no way I'm ever going to accomplish this, then you're not ever going to succeed. But if you're able to understand that there's an abundance in the world, right, that there is enough for all of us, then you're able to take those risks. And then, the growth mindset, you always have to be committed to growth. And that is taking every opportunity, no matter what happens. If you fail 97 times before you succeed, those 97 times were not failure. They were learning opportunities. They were growth opportunities. So I'm always on a path of growth. I can't wait to see who I'm going to be next year, meaning how I'm going to grow. And that's why I'm so open to change and understanding that growth is change. So it opens your mindset to so many elements of the world that will help you be a better human being as well. Because if you're into the growth mentality, you understand that everybody's on a journey, and how they believe today, it may change their mind next year. So don't judge their character so much for a belief they may have. Just understand that's how they think right now. But it doesn't mean that's how they're going to think 2 years from now.
Right, right. Yeah, we talk about that as change, and it can sometimes feel grating. But you're saying, hey, it's the growth mentality. That's a great
Absolutely.
So you have a section in the book about inclusion, Yasmin. And some of us, me included, get a little bit sensitive when people talk about DEI, because it feels about compliance and bureaucracy and hitting numbers and so on like that. It's not very people sensitive, I don't think. But you have such a lovely way of looking at it. You say it's about inclusion and thinking about whether the other person is feeling included. Try and put yourself in their mind and make them feel included. So talk to us about inclusion as you see it.
For me, it's always been very simple, but not easy. And what I mean is that it's a simple, like, if you want to create inclusion, it's very simple. Ask them if they feel included, and then ask them what they need to feel included, and then create that. Like, it's very simple. However, it's not easy, because then you have to operationalize it. And then you get people who may not believe, well, no, this is just the way it is here, and they just got to get used to it. And so mindsets, right? And beliefs and systems. And to me, it's like, then don't say you want inclusion, because inclusion means that you have to be willing to take a step back and understand that the way you see the world may not be so inclusive after all. And that doesn't mean you're bad or wrong. It just means an opportunity for growth. And that's why the growth, it all combines. And inclusion really is ask the people. If I ask you to the table, I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel included, but I may miss the mark because I'm not you. So my natural question is, do you feel included? Whether it's after the meeting, in a survey, whatever it is. And then when they say no, really be curious to understand why, and then find ways to create systems to ensure that at the next time they do feel included. But that means you as an individual have to free yourself at least as much as you can from biases,
Yeah.
and you have to work at it. And, I had a perfect example for me is growing up. Tattoos were like, my parents were like, you don't mess with your body, no tattoos. So I grew up thinking tattoos were just bad or wrong. And, let's see, educated people or people who didn't have them or whatever it may be. Nowadays, tattoos are like, going to the bathroom. It's just so everybody, and they don't mean things that. So I had to re-educate myself of this belief that I used to think of tattoos as bad, where it's like, no, now that's expression. And it took me a while, but I had to work on myself. But I am self-aware to understand that my belief 30 years ago may not apply to the world we live in now. And it's time for me to grow. And that's being vulnerable as well, right? So it's a process of, once again, it makes you a better human being and a better leader overall.
Well, there's a lot to balance here, Yasmin. You've been teaching this for a long time. You've written the book, which is kind of a one-time event. We can all benefit from it, but you teach it. And there's a section in the book headed, "How do you teach this?" So I'm going to ask you that question. How do you teach it? Is this workshop? Is this consulting? Is it one-on-one?
It's actually, I have a leadership program in partnership with the USC Marshall School of Business where we teach these principles to women. It's an executive women leadership program. But honestly, you have to live it first, because if I don't live it, then it doesn't work, because they have to see an example, and it's a progress, not perfection, right? So I do believe that individuals who teach this, and I think that's why it's so hard to teach, because if you're just going to hire facilitators to do it that are not necessarily living it, then people need to see it in practice. So, and they need to see the results, and they need to feel that there's a community supporting them, because now you're challenging identity, right? Which is deep seated beliefs, and they have to know there's a payoff. So they have to see someone living a life that's what you're telling them it's worth living and worth doing, and all the great things that can happen. And I think my success and the success of my organization and my programs is because I'm continuously growing, applying what I'm teaching, sharing when something doesn't work, and that I'm not perfect, and when I am ungracious sometimes, when I'm like, saying that I do take a step back and say I could have responded better to that, and learning for next time. So I do believe it could be taught, but I believe that it's with people who have a mission to live lives in this way, and then they want to teach it. So it's reverse engineer. Don't just hire facilitators, hire people who are committed to living a life in this way, and then train them in the way you want to train them. But they do have to have certain characteristics as moral leaders themselves.
Well, I found this book tremendously beneficial for myself because it directs you to think about yourself, to the self-awareness that you started with, the first pillar. I mean, that's a little bit of a jolt if you do that actively. And then you think about the self-compassion, self-regulation, and so on. And then you think about your impact with other people. I mean, it's a very cognitive, engaging kind of a thing, as well as being subjective and emotional. So it's a lot to balance. Maybe we're running out of time here, but maybe you can give us some guidance about how, as individuals, we might start this journey.
It's a lot to balance. However, I choose to reframe it to see it's an exciting opportunity we're not trying to get it all perfect. I think when you have a mindset of trying to get it all perfect, being gracious all the time, being in gratitude all the time, you're always going to set yourself up to fail. But if you're able to say, you know what, I wasn't so gracious this last time. Why? Let me understand why. And maybe because I was angry about this. So maybe next time, and really think about how you can just be better. And I mean, I laugh at myself all the time, and I'm like, oh my God, look what I did. And it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's never a destination, mm-hmm. But you have to embrace the journey and see it as a lifelong journey of just getting better. And you're going to take 2 steps forward and 5 steps back, but as long as you get back on track, and then you have a purpose, because you'll start seeing reap the benefits of living a more peaceful life, of not attracting that negative energy, of cutting out negative energy in your life because it causes certain things that doesn't allow you to be grateful. It just kind of all flows. So I say, embrace the journey, find community, people like-minded. I'm creating a study guide for the book so that I can lead people to get together in groups and build community as they progress and become better. And it could be a lifelong community of being with like-minded people who just want to become better human beings and better leaders. So once I have that study guide, I will definitely let you know.
Please do. Yes. The community idea, I think, is very, very empowering for a group of people to learn together.
Absolutely. That's very powerful.
So the book title is Graciously Assertive. It's how becoming a better human makes you a better leader. So we'll link to that. Is there a website where you'd like people to go and visit and find out more?
Yes, you can go to DrYasminInstitute.com, DrYasminInstitute.com, and you can find the book there and everything about my different leadership programs.
Good. Well, we'll put those links in our show notes. And Yasmin, this is a much better approach to leadership than we typically come across. It's so refreshing. It's challenging, but it's so optimistic, I think, about where we're trying to go to be better at running companies, running corporations, and making people feel the sense of community you talk about. So thank you so much for what
you're welcome. Just remember this, anything great is usually challenging.
Good. Well, we'll be positively challenged in that respect.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here today.
This has been another episode of the Value Creators Podcast. Thanks for listening. You can visit thevaluecreators.com for links and resources related to this episode, and check out hunterhastings.com for more content on entrepreneurial business management based on value creation principles.